What's good, guys? Welcome back to another video. Yesterday's trade ended up being an absolute banger. I really hope you watched the video and took advantage of the trade because, it doesn't get easier than that. We have now basically ended 2 days in a row where we had a valid setup and it went beyond 2R. In yesterday's case, I ended up securing a 4R win and the entry was shared on Twitter. But in terms of Tuesday, we easily had a potential 2.5R trade. But, you guys know the story if you follow me on Twitter. I ended up getting front run where my target was missed just a little bit. And then I ended up getting stopped at break even. Yep. But either way, the reason why I'm mentioning that is because today could have the potential to become a third day in a row where we're going to have a solid setup on Bitcoin. Now, so far, to start the day, we've already had some pretty nice movement throughout Bitcoin as well as all of the other major markets out there, which I will mention. But the thing you want to keep in mind today is that we finally have news. This is going to be the first USD high impact news that we've had all week. And so far, the charts are telling the same story. Every single asset out there is anticipating some sort of a big move. So today is going to be the one day where you don't really want to miss out on, any opportunities. And so, yeah, I'm going to break it down. I'm going to talk about Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about all of these other assets as well. Without any further ado, let's dive into it. And remember, follow my Twitter if you want to follow along with the live executions. But just going to kick things off first on Bitcoin because this is the elephant in the room. After all, we're a crypto channel primarily. So I would assume that a lot of you are here to, follow along with the Bitcoin story. Now, so far, the daily bias is bearish. No surprise there. We were already anticipating bearishness. I have been calling bearishness for like 2 weeks now. And yeah, so far, this is how it's been playing out. Again, I want to give you guys a kind reminder. I was one of the only people that managed to predict that the bull market was over. And one of the reasons why I was able to sell the top. And in fact, if you go back to my videos all the way back from October, November, December, you will see that I was one of the only ones who was calling when this happened. And ever since then, you came back into some sort of fair value gap and off you go towards the downside. Now, same thing is happening again, where the market structure and the overall order flow is already bearish. And right now you're coming back into, what is this? A bearish fair value gap on the weekly chart. And so far, it's been playing out exactly the way it's supposed to be. So considering the fact that you are in a downtrend already, I don't expect this downtrend to end anytime soon. Not because I want the market to go down. No, I am a crypto bro at heart. I hold bags. And obviously the last thing I want to see is for Bitcoin to start dumping and everything else to follow. But cannot ignore the reality that when the market is telling me like, hey, I'm bearish, I'm not just going to be in denial and not listen to it, right? That's, it's not really a profitable strategy. So regardless of whether or not I like to hear it or regardless of, whether I like to know the news or whatever, it's bearish. Simple as that. And when something is bearish, you are going to reach for some sort of sell-side liquidity target. And in terms of the higher time frame at the moment, that sell-side liquidity target remains to be at $50,000. Now, again, this can change, and I do hope it changes, but you would need to break above $95,000 at the very minimum before you even consider that downtrend's over. Or at the very least, going above 82,000, right? If that happens, at least that gives us a little bit of room to be like, maybe we're starting to see some early signs of a trend reversal here. But as it stands, bearish. So overall, because of the higher time frame, we already established the fact that we're bearish. So no surprise here that today we are going to be looking for a short. Daily chart, again, daily bias is pretty bearish. So no surprise there, no changes there. So the only thing we want to keep in mind is, okay, once we come down into the 1 hourly chart, which is the middle time frame in our case, how do we find areas where we can execute from? How do we find areas where we want to take trades from? Again, the key word here is that we are not just directly placing a trade here. We're just looking for areas of interest where we may want to be interested in a trade. And so far, it's going to be this fair value gap over here, as well as this order block over here. So as you can see, we're already inside the fair value gap. So at this point, as long as you get a further confirmation that order flow is bearish, which there are 2 ways to kind of know this. The first one is going to be completely validated because right now it's already 4 a.m. and in about an hour's time, the London kill zone is going to be, over, and we don't want to be trading outside of a kill zone. So by the time you guys watch this video, all you want to look for is a candle close beneath this level right here at $73,000. This will validate this as a new potential order block on the 1 hourly chart, and a retracement back into this order block is going to give you an opportunity to jump into a short with your entry kind of here, you stop above here and targeting for 2R, just basically targeting for further continuation towards the downside. Now, with that out of the way though, there is also a potential that, you could just continue to chop around and you do not eventually you won't have this, right? What if that happens? Doesn't that mean this trade is invalidated? Absolutely not. Because if you actually look at the order flow, you're already bearish. It's the same way how yesterday, now when I gave you guys the setup for yesterday, I was telling you guys like, hey, ideally you get a candle close beneath this level, which eventually we did. But even without, the order flow is already bearish. And so yesterday I actually ended up taking a trade around here, right? As you can see, this was the exact entry, this was the exact stop, and this was my target. But you'll see that with the entry, I entered before this confirmation happened. So what gives, right? Well, that's because the order flow was already bearish. The only reason I'm telling you guys this is because most of you guys, I expect, you do not have full context of the system that I'm using. You do not have, like, just because you understand the overall concepts and you understand the overall direction does not mean that you understand the minutia of, how to actually execute this on the 5-minute chart. Now, if you would like to learn that, first link in the description box below, no pressure if you don't. But if you like what you see and if you like the results that I've been getting for basically the last year and a half, where I've basically averaged a pretty solid track record of winning a lot more than I do lose, then you know you're watching the right person. If you like this philosophy, if you like the way that I do things, then check it out. You're going to be surprised. But because the order flow is already bearish, as long as you're able to confirm that the 5-minute chart is bearish as well. So for example, at this point, like just within the context of this chart, if I get a break above here, below here, then yeah, it's already valid. As long as you're in the right timing, which leads me on to the next point. News today is at 8:30 a.m. New York, which means the ideal trading window for today is going to be between 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Why? Because the hour before news to the hour after news is going to be your ideal trading window. Why? Because when you have news, actually red folder news, high impact news, what is everyone doing? What is everyone thinking? Everyone's going to be thinking, oh, because we have core PCE price index today, something's going to happen around that time. So most people are going to be looking at that time, expecting a move to happen. What happens when that happens? Well, you get a lot of volatility around that time. And volatility is a trader's best friend. Because without volatility, we cannot do anything. But with volatility, regardless of if it goes up or down, as long as there is movement, we can take advantage of that to make money. And for today, obviously, we would be looking for some sort of downside volatility. That is the volatility that will be beneficial to the system that we're trading here. So either way, like, by the time you watch this video, regardless of what actually is happening on the chart, as long as you have time frame alignment in the sense to where, all right, your 1 hourly time frame alignment is going to be there no matter what, because until you break above like 74,500, you're not going to get a change in hourly order flow. As long as you do not close bullish all of a sudden on the daily chart, you're going to have bearish order flow. You're going to have a bearish daily bias. So your higher time frames are already going to be aligned. So all you need really is 4 to 5 minutes to also be aligned. At the moment though, it's not, right? Because you just got a bullish CIC towards the upside. Yes, I know you're coming back into some sort of higher time frame key level, but just because you are in some sort of higher time frame key level does not mean that you automatically enter. For those of you that have tried this before and you have lost money doing this is probably the reason why. You are not waiting for your lower time frame confirmations. So you fix that? Well, you wait for your lower time frame confirmations. Simple as that. So yeah, by the time you watch this video, as long as you have bearishness, as long as you do not close above, as long as you do not start making high highs and high lows, then yeah, this setup is going to be valid and it's going to be a super easy setup. And I know it sounds a lot simpler than, but the truth is trading can be really simple. In fact, most of trading is really simple. And when you have a simple system that works, that prints money, then say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, I would hope that we go all the way to 70,400 because this seems to be, the target that I can see on the 4-hourly chart, 1-hourly chart, whatever, right? All of these charts. This is relatively close on, like, I don't know if price will, drop by $2,000 today, especially considering the fact that we just look at the average, like, ATR that we've been dealing with for the last, few weeks. As you can see here, we're dealing with about $2,000 of daily volatility on average, right? This is extrapolated over the last 2 weeks of data. This can be a little bit misleading because we're looking at Bitcoin, which means that it's also taking into account Saturdays and Sundays as trading days, which, it's not, right? Saturdays and Sundays are absolutely horrible. So even if you kind of like disregard that, maybe we'll be sitting at about $2,500, maybe $3,000 of volatility, right? 3,000, I'm going to say, is a bit of a stretch. So if we take a look at how much movement we already had for today, we started today with the high of today at 74,500 and the low of today is going to be at 72,700. So technically speaking, if we're anticipating $2,000 of daily volatility, that volatility is already over. Now, if we account for a little bit more, then maybe we could have another $1,000. So I would say the best bet for today is because, like, we already have a decent move already happened prior to the New York session. Probably the best move is to just take profit at 2R, or like if you're cheeky and you want to aim for something a little bit further, like go ahead and aim for this. But I'm saying just purely based off of, understanding volatility and understanding like average daily volatility, this is not super likely to, get hit today at the very least. So 2R, 2.5R, like if you see it, take it, and you're going to be all good. So that is the setup of Bitcoin. And obviously I will be hosting any updates to Bitcoin on Twitter today. So feel free to follow me there if you want to follow along with the live executions. So next up, we're going to come and take a look at gold. So what I'm about to share with you with these next couple of setups are just some other high probability setups that I see besides Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's pretty good for today, but as I've said earlier in the video, that because today is a high impact news day, there are quite a few charts that are kind of setting up for a nice move. First of which is going to be gold. Gold is kind of reaching for some sort of sell side liquidity target over here at $4,100. Now, so far, the weekly bias is bearish, the daily bias is bearish, and if you go down into the 1 hourly bias, it is also very bearish. So in terms of gold, the setup is going to be super simple. Right here is the fair value gap that you're probably going to retrace into. Potentially, you can go a little bit higher, right? You have a sequence of 2 fair value gaps, same exact setup as Bitcoin, where you come into here, you wait for news timing, you wait for a breakdown on the 5-minute chart, you get a CISD on the 5-minute chart, and boom, this is easy. And I know it sounds stupidly simple, but good trading is oftentimes simple. And some of the best trades that you will ever take is going to be the simple ones. Why? Because when you open up a chart and within 5 seconds, you can see the setup, and within 5 seconds, you can identify that, hey, you got something pretty good here, or at least you got something that has potential here. Those oftentimes ends up becoming your A+ trades. Why? Because in this case, everything's kind of pointing to the same direction, to the point where you don't really have to make an argument with yourself. Like, oh, yeah, I think this will go lower, but like, if you take a look here, you have like this support, or you have this, your order block, yada, yada, la, la, la. When you can make an argument for both sides of the equation, that's when it gets tough. Because how do you know if you should go long? How do you know if you go short? If you go long, where should you take profit? Like, the best moves are always the ones where it's just super straightforward. Everything's pointing in the same direction. And in the case of gold at the moment, it's all pointing in the same direction. We just need to actually get the entry. And again, like, X will be the place to be. And I think lastly, we also take a look at USD Canadian. Now, this was the big winner for me yesterday, including Bitcoin. I will, like, again, preface on Twitter. I've been doing this for a year and a half, where I've been kind of like documenting all of these trades. But in terms of USD Canadian, you have a bullish daily bias. Secondly, you're coming back into a bullish order block on the 1 hourly chart. Thirdly, you have bullish order flow on the 1 hourly chart. So this, my friends, is an example of an A+ potential trade, where at the moment, London, you've swept below the Asia lows, I believe. No, not yet the Asia lows, but like, yeah, this is just super straightforward. USD Canadian, gold, I would focus on both of these. Now, if I had to pick one over the other, I would say USD Canadian as the A+ trade. The only reason being, like, USD Canadian has consistently been the big winner for me over the last few weeks, where everything else was kind of choppy, everything else was kind of uncertain. USD Canadian has just been bang, 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 making money left, right, and center. So I would focus on USD Canadian. I would keep gold as also another potential A+ setup. And then obviously, to those of you that are trading crypto, Bitcoin is going to be your best friend. But with that said, I'm going to see you guys on Twitter later. And again, like, feel free to click the first link in the description box below if you enjoy the way that I do things. It's a very simple system, but it also works. And a lot of people have made a lot of money doing this. In fact, I'm going to leave an interview here. And I say interview, but it's really more like a podcast session of how an absolute beginner goes from 10 years in the military, quitting the military, joining, like, just starting trading, and within 4 months, as a complete beginner, he managed to earn $40,000 in profit payouts. That's a result that most people will spend months or years and will never achieve. But he managed to do it in 4 months, and there are a few things that allowed him to do it, some of which he learned from the military. So yeah, very interesting listen. I would like you to check it out. But with that said, I'll see you guys later. Ciao, ciao.